Amazing transformation. Millionaire discovers abandoned little girl and changes her life forever. James Harrington stood in the glow of his office's panoramic windows, staring out at the sprawling suburban landscape below, an empire built on code, ambition, and relentless drive. With sleek cars parked like museum pieces in the driveway and lavish parties enveloping him in a haze of clinking glasses and forced laughter, his heart hung heavy with a void he could not name. Beyond the gleaming facade lay an aching disconnection, an absence echoing in every meticulously arranged meeting and digitized transaction. He was rich, powerful, respected, a titan of technology, but every achievement only served to deepen the chasm within. That evening, the familiar ache surged as dusk crept into the park across the street. He found himself wandering into the sanctuary of rustling leaves, breaking free from the confines of endless screens and sterile walls. It was there, beneath the dying sunset, that he caught sight of her, a scruffy little girl clutching a worn backpack that practically dragged on the ground. Lily's big, scared eyes locked onto his, and for the first time in years, James felt something shift in his chest. As she spoke, her voice trembling, the weight of her words untangled his carefully constructed world. Alone, abandoned, fighting to survive every day, her resilience pierced through his carefully curated detachment. Panic rose within him as he grappled with an instinctive desire to shield her, but dread crept in. Could he truly take this child into his life? The thought collided with the cold logic of his existence. How could he risk everything he worked for? But when her gaze dropped to the ground, filled with palpable despair, something snapped inside him. In that darkening park, James Harrington vowed to shape Lily's fate, promising a safe harbor for a fleeting moment. Days turned into weeks, and raising Lily awakened the dormant curiosity within him. Suddenly his high-rise life felt dissonant against her reality. Together, they plowed through the underbelly of lost connections, food banks, shelters, forgotten neighborhoods. Each experience burrowed deeper, raising questions he had long avoided. He was confronted with the bitter contrast of his life, the disparity he had never acknowledged, gnawing at his conscience. Each night, he returned to her infectious laughter ringing through the walls of his opulent home, but he also faced an unsettling truth. The more he grew to care for Lily, the more he felt the eroding grip of his business empire. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. James soon found himself at a precipice. A ruthless rival from his cutthroat past smelled vulnerability and prepared to strike, ready to twist his new bond into a weapon. Anger surged within him. Did he dare to protect his unlikely family, or uphold the empire that defined him? With the walls closing in, he felt the weight of his past loom larger, a storm overhead threatening to tear down the fragile structure of his life. Each encounter with Lily not only brought warmth but also slapped him with memories of his own childhood, abandoned dreams, and whispered fears echoing from the shadows. An unbearable tension crackled in the air. His heart raced as he lay awake each night, haunted by the impending collapse of everything he had built against the visceral pull of what truly mattered. The stakes had shifted. He was no longer fighting solely for success but for love, for family, for redemption. Forced into a corner, James now stammered at the ultimate quandary of existence. Could he truly protect the one thing that had come to mean everything, or would the relentless demands of his past drown them both, leaving nothing but an empty shell beneath the glow of his city lights? James awoke to the soft murmur of Lily's laughter filtering through the walls, contrasting sharply with the stark reality pulling at the corners of his mind. Struggling to steady his racing thoughts, he recalled the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders, a burden he had never anticipated. What started as an impulsive rescue had morphed into a cataclysm of conflicting emotions. The complexity of his feelings surged like turbulent waves, dragging him into uncharted waters. As days wore on, James found his meetings with investors increasingly irksome. Their discussions about profits and market trends felt increasingly hollow compared to the visceral experiences he now shared with Lily. He could hear her voice echoing in his subconscious, reminding him of the smiles exchanged over shared meals at rundown diners and the hopeful dreams they both dared to whisper before sleep. In stark contrast, the realm of business felt cold, detached, adorned with metrics devoid of meaning. Yet, he couldn't simply abandon the empire he had built. Its sturdy foundation had cost him blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Advice from his trusted associates echoed in his mind: keep your personal life and business separate. But was that principle still valid? Was a fractured approach to life sustainable if it meant sacrificing love for power? The decision weighed heavy, an anchor around his heart. Conflicting priorities had begun to emerge, with the impending threat from his rival looming over him like a dark cloud. Each sly comment aimed at his weakness fed the darker corners of his mind, where doubt and anger festered. Confronting the very fabric of his identity became paramount, yet the luxury of indecision was no longer available. He needed to act. A resolve took shape within him. He could no longer be half present in either realm. But how could he fortify his empire while protecting the fragile connection he had formed with Lily? Clarity emerged as he devised a plan. He would blend his two worlds. He would leverage his technology prowess to create solutions for those in need, directly addressing the suffering he had witnessed with Lily. He envisioned tech-driven initiatives, perhaps a charitable arm tied to his business that focused on education and sustainable living for underprivileged children. These ideas vibrated with purpose, challenging the very core of what he had believed about success. With vengeance brewing in the background, he didn't have the luxury of time. He couldn't remain idle, waiting for his rival to strike. Every moment spent devising strategy. Every meeting he convened shelved frustrations instead of actions. As Lily shared a drawing of their home, a cartoonish rendition of their life together, one filled with trees and sunshine, James felt his heart swell. This was what mattered. This was hope incarnate. But as he prepared to dive headfirst into his plan, a familiar trepidation tugged at him. What if his ideas faltered? What if the weight of his business crumbled under his new aspirations? The urge to retreat into familiar territory rose hard within him. Yet, as he watched Lily carefully color the finishing touches on her drawing, he realized that he was at a crossroads defined by a profound truth. To protect his newfound family, he needed to fully embrace this dual existence. He steeled himself for the confrontation that awaited, understanding that his rival would not be dissuaded easily. The confrontation loomed closer, a test against the remnants of his guarded past. James Harrington had been a titan in technology, but now, life demanded he navigate those shadows with the light of newfound love guiding him. The moment had arrived for him to face not only his rival but also the lingering doubts that still shadowed his heart. As he turned to Lily, ready to embark on this uncharted journey, a question lingered unspoken. Would his transformation be enough, or had he placed everything he cared about on the line? The weight of his decision pressed heavily upon him, a profound rippling of uncertainty that ignited the path ahead. An inevitable confrontation awaited. Would he be prepared when the final test arrived? The morning sun spilled through the window, illuminating the room in vivid hues. As James shifted in bed, the weight of his decisions loomed large. Piled next to him were sketches, visions of what his new initiative could cultivate, a bridge between his corporate ambitions and the pure joy that Lily represented. He stumbled into the kitchen, energized by the clarity of his purpose, yet tinged with the urgency of the deadline weighing on his shoulder. Here, in this space, with the warmth of Lily's laughter still echoing in his mind, he felt the beating heart of the changes he was determined to implement. But visions remained aspirations until transformed into concrete action. Over the next few days, James dove deep into research. He established meetings with local nonprofits to understand the community's needs. Each discussion revealed cracks in the existing systems, exposing vulnerabilities that could be addressed. Thousands of children without access to technology, education, or even clean water. Each revelation ignited a spark of resolve in him. Yet, as he began thus carefully to weave his ambitions with social consciousness, he faced rising tension within himself. The harsh words of his rival shadowed every discussion. You can't even protect your own business. How can you hope to save others? The taunts echoed in his mind, feeding doubt. Was he merely a privileged man playing at philanthropy, or could he actually foster change? In a moment of vulnerability, he confided in Lily one evening. She sat at the table, working on another drawing, a vibrant scene of children gathering around laptops. Drawing upon her endless kindness, James asked, "What do you think it means to help people?" Lily looked up, pausing thoughtfully. "It means sharing what you have, right? It means giving smiles, like when we helped Mom find her lost cat." There was a wisdom in her childlike observation. The simplicity of her logic cut through the complexities he infused with his adult mind. "Exactly," he replied, touched. In that moment, he understood that the essence of what he was trying to build should be rooted in shared joy and collaboration, not merely an image crafted for praise or profit. Inspired by her clarity, James reconfigured his strategy. Instead of approaching change from a top-down corporate perspective, he planned a launch event not just to showcase his technological solutions but to engage the community actively. It would be a celebration of everything he had grown to love, the connection forged between intention and action. Days flew by in a flurry of activity as invitations were sent out, technology was assembled, and plans set in motion. His staff, initially skeptical, began to see the potential in James's vision. They rallied behind him, transforming skepticism into commitment. Yet tension began to mount as his rival grew more aggressive, using insider knowledge to undermine his efforts. Sabotage? The whispers slithered through the corridors of James's mind. The ambitious spirit propelling his transformation stood poised at the precipice, but now shadows threatened to swallow his resolve whole. With his launch event just weeks away, James could feel the pressure mounting. Every delay forced him to question whether he could merge his two worlds effectively before time ran out. Conflicted emotions churned within him, doubt fighting for space amongst empowerment. Would they triumph when they needed him most? As the day drew nearer, he took a moment alone to breathe, gazing at one of Lily's bright drawings hanging on the wall. She had enshrined a world where smiles radiated joy, and children thrived together. In that reflection, he felt the weight shift. Transformation hinged on resilience, not just vision. Would the impending confrontation solidify his evolution, or was the descent into chaos a foregone conclusion? The questions flooded through his mind as he prepared to wage the most critical battle of his life, not just for his business, but for the promise of the future he envisioned alongside Lily. Would he emerge victorious, or would he find himself irrevocably altered in a tempest of scrutiny? As the launch date loomed closer, James felt the familiar prick of anxiety curling in the pit of his stomach. He surrounded himself with his sketches and plans, studying them meticulously, each line a testament not just to his ambition but also to his growing insecurities. Could he withstand the storm brewing not just outside, but within? It was Friday evening when James received an email that would send his heart racing. It came from a major tech magazine, expressing interest in covering his initiative. This was the exposure he'd hoped for, a beacon of validation amidst the chaos. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as ideas rushed in. He imagined how this profile might change the narrative, how it might position him not only as a businessman but also as a thought leader committed to social change. But just as quickly, the shadow of doubt returned. Was he merely a businessman desperate for approval, or was there a genuine calling behind his project? James? Lily's soft voice disrupted his torrent of thoughts as she peeked into his office. There was a stillness in her gaze that calmed some of his storm. "Yeah, kiddo?" he responded, trying to keep his tone light. "Are you worried about your big thing? You look like you're about to take a math test." He chuckled, recognizing her charm. "Maybe a little. Just trying to make everything perfect." Lily stepped closer, reaching for a crumpled piece of paper. "But what if perfect means the same as no fun? Like how you helped me draw. You don't worry about it being perfect, right? You just enjoy it." Her perspective struck a chord deep inside him. How many times had he sacrificed enjoyment for the sake of perfection? It dawned on him that this initiative needed the same spirit of exploration and joy they shared during their art sessions. With renewed determination, he pushed the perfectionist tendencies aside. That night's discussions with his staff would be different. He would share not just the initiative's ambitions, but the vulnerabilities that accompanied them. The evening could be more about collective creativity than rigid execution. The following day, he gathered his team. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, but instead of a dry presentation on metrics, he laid bare his insecurities. "I know we're facing some hurdles," he began, tracking each person's eyes, willing them to see the sincerity beneath his polished exterior. "And to be honest, I'm scared. Scared of failing this community, scared of what everyone will say if things don't go as planned." He paused, letting the weight of his honesty settle. A couple of staff members shifted in their seats. James took a deep breath. "I want our event to reflect not just our technology, but our human spirit. We need to celebrate together our ideas, our strengths, and face the challenges as a team." After a moment, a junior associate raised her hand. "I always thought our reporting metrics outweighed personal feelings. It's refreshing to see our passion leading the way." The warmth of her words sent a ripple of affirmation across the room. The dialogue evolved, fueled by shared vulnerability. Ideas flowed, strategies shifted, and James noticed a palpable change. The tension dissipated, replaced by an almost electric energy born from collaboration. They began brainstorming ways to meaningfully engage those they aimed to help. Later that afternoon, as he stepped outside for fresh air, the vibrant sounds of street life surrounded him. Amidst the chaos and uncertainty, James felt the spark of purpose igniting his core once more. It wasn't just about the technology or recognition, it was about real connections. He pictured Lily, laughing over a fresh drawing, reminding him that life was meant to be sketched with joy. However, as he glanced down the street, he noticed a figure lingering near the entrance of his building, his rival. The man's posture radiated contempt, and their eyes locked, an unspoken challenge sparking between them. The pressure morphed into a palpable tension. James felt the stakes rising higher than ever. Could this rivalry overshadow all he was striving for, or would it galvanize his resolve? In the increasing heat of competition, would he retain the authenticity he had just rediscovered? The only path forward was to confront the looming threat head-on. The desire to protect the vision he and Lily shared burned fiercely within him. He would challenge not merely for survival but as a testament to his evolving identity. As he turned to re-enter the building, a determination he hadn't felt before surged through him. The fight was on, and the outcome would define him not just as a businessman, but as a beacon of hope in his community. Was he prepared to confront the very embodiment of his self-doubt? The answer awaited him at the intersection of ambition and authenticity. As James stepped back into the building, the cool air brushed over him, a stark contrast to the fiery determination building within. He could still feel the weight of his rival's gaze, a lingering reminder of the unspoken battle ahead. The discomfort sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. This wasn't just another business venture. It was the crossroads of who he was becoming. In the days that followed, James dove headfirst into preparations. He set an ambitious agenda for team meetings, focusing not only on logistics but also on fostering creativity. Each session became an opportunity to dismantle the walls he had built around his professional persona. He encouraged his team to bring emotional stakes into the conversation. What did their success mean to them personally? This vulnerability was met with apprehension at first, but soon, a culture of openness began to flourish. Concepts that once felt stagnant bloomed with the promise of innovation. James took to heart the lessons Lily embodied. Inspired by her exuberance for drawing, he began to visualize their project as a canvas, one that needed not strict lines but vibrant strokes of passion. He started sketching out ideas that were unconventional, allowing himself to embrace risks he previously deemed unnecessary. He remembered the bloom of excitement in his chest when they explored art together and sought to replicate that feeling in the workplace. But with every step forward came moments of self-doubt. As James wrestled with his insecurities, he defined himself staring at the screen, paralyzed by the fear of possible judgments. Could he truly lead? The shadow of his rival loomed larger, embodying every hesitation he had about himself. That afternoon, after a lengthy session of brainstorming, he found himself cycling through ideas, replaying what could go wrong about each one. It was exhausting but illuminating. Each cycle exposed another layer of his fear. He would take a deep breath, remembering his vow to share his authentic self with the team. The trash can was overflowing with crumpled balls of paper that represented thoughts discarded in moments of intensity. With each unsuccessful idea, James learned something about himself. The fears that resonated were a part of being human, and acknowledging them heightened his resilience. By embracing his vulnerability as a strength, he began reshaping the narrative of his life and work. He was building a mosaic of connections rather than erecting barriers of perfection. Still, the looming rivalry stayed etched in his mind. Determined to not let it defeat him, James decided to confront his rival directly, not in the way he would have before with cold business strategy but rather with the openness he had cultivated within himself. One afternoon, he summoned the courage to invite his rival for coffee, a gesture that felt both awkward and necessary. If he could see beyond the competition and understand the person behind the name, perhaps he could channel the rivalry into something constructive. It was a risk, and he knew it might backfire, but what other choice did he have? The coffee shop buzzed with conversation as James approached the table where his rival sat, the man's expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" James asked, his heart racing. The reply was a measured nod, but an opportunity had opened. He was ready to confront not just the rivalry but also his internal battles. In that moment, James realized that every step he took toward his own development was an intricate dance, weaving authenticity into ambition. Would he find common ground, or would he be met with hostility? With this question hovering between them, James awaited the response that might either cement or crack the foundations of his newfound courage. James sat across from his rival, an electric tension crackling in the air between them. The cafe's warm ambience felt starkly out of place against the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. As he sipped his coffee, he studied the man opposite him, searching for signs of the fierce competitor he had always regarded with a mix of admiration and animosity. Today, he sought not confrontation but collaboration. "Thanks for meeting me," James said, attempting to break the ice. "I know we've had our differences, but I believe we might benefit from seeing things from each other's perspectives." His rival's eyes narrowed slightly. "You think so?" There was skepticism in his tone, a hint of challenge. James pressed on, emboldened by his recent realizations. The vulnerability he had begun to embrace was now his shield rather than a crutch. "I'm not here to argue," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "What I want is to understand what drives you. What success looks like from your viewpoint." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick like the steam rising from their mugs. James felt every beat in his chest as he wrestled with his urge to fill the void with self-justification. This was new territory, trading conflict for potential alliance. In that charged moment, it became clear that empathy was a language either had mastered. Finally, his rival leaned back in his chair and let out a bemused chuckle. "All right, I'll bite. This is unexpected, I'll give you that." James dared to smile, grateful to see a crack in the armor he had perceived as invulnerable. It was a small victory, yet it carried weight. They began to exchange ideas, detailing their visions for their respective projects. Two different colors on a shared canvas, beginning to outline similarities instead of stark contrasts. Each insight James gathered from the dialogue was a revelation not just about his rival, but about himself. As they spoke about their experiences, he began to see how their competitive spirits had morphed into obstacles instead of healthy motivations. He discovered that his rival, beneath the hardened exterior, wrestled with doubts much like his own. They were, after all, two warriors battling the same invisible enemy, the fear of inadequacy. But clarity didn't erase the tension. As the conversation deepened, James recognized moments when his competitive instincts flared. Old habits returned, whispering temptations to dominate the discussion or assert his superiority. These instants became critical tests of his growth. A pull from his unevolved past clashed with the new narratives he was forging. The realization hit him squarely. True leadership would require navigating these complexities without losing his footing. "Look, I need to ask," James ventured gingerly, "what is your biggest dream in this business?" The question hung in the air, launching them into corners of vulnerability few dared explore. He could see it a glimpse of the future beyond rivalry. Perhaps they could innovate together rather than against one another, leveraging their strengths. As the conversation veered towards collaboration, feelings of possibility mingled with lingering doubts. What deeper truths about this man would surface? What would surrendering resentment mean for his own identity moving forward? Then suddenly, James's focus shifted as he noticed a young girl at a nearby table, sketching intently in a notebook. The sight struck a chord. Her unfettered creativity mirrored his aspirations. Would his own resolve wane if faced with the vulnerability of others? A test of self, not merely in his professional life but in his deepest moral beliefs? His rival's voice pulled him back. So, what's next for us? James locked eyes with him, a spark of determination igniting in his chest. It's time we figure that out together, he replied, feeling the weight of uncharted responsibilities manifesting within him. But another thought loomed, ominously persistent. Would his newfound connection be enough to steer him through the treacherous waters ahead? As they left the cafe, the air was thick with potential. James felt the ground beneath him shift, as he confronted not just his rival but the complex fabric of who he was becoming. As they stepped outside, the world felt different, reverberating with newfound intensity. James's mind churned, grappling with self-awareness and a future he had only just begun to envision. The conversations they had threaded together left a simmering potential that could propel them both into uncharted territories. However, along with the excitement, a knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. The stakes had never been higher. He watched his rival walk ahead, exuding a confidence that faltered only at the edges. James knew that for their collaboration to flourish, he would need to evolve his will to blend personal ambition with humility needed fine-tuning. How could he navigate that path without compromising his integrity? Turning back towards the cafe, fresh determination coursed through him. Perhaps he needed to retrain his mind, to unlock the full potential of partnership, yet time still felt limited. James couldn't shake the feeling that with an alliance like the one he was forging, the challenges ahead would grow exponentially. His thoughts drifted to the girl with the sketchbook. What did her raw creativity represent in the grand scheme of his newly adopted principles? Did she hold a mirror to the parts of him that longed for expression, the parts that dared to create when he often clammed up under pressure? The lingering image of her focus and zeal stirred something deep within him. If she could harness that free-spirited passion, surely he could channel it into his professional life, into this alliance forming with his rival. But how? That question danced in and out of his mind, igniting a sense of urgency. For the past few years, James had always placed success on a pedestal instead of integrating it with the kind of creativity and joy he had felt in childhood. Now, standing at this crossroads, he could hardly contain his internal turmoil. Was success simply about winning, or was it intrinsically linked with collaboration and mutual respect? The path forward depended on his ability to balance competing desires against shared victories. The office, James decided aloud, surprising himself. Let us meet at the office tomorrow. We can sketch out our combined vision. This proactive suggestion felt good, it felt right. It embraced the fertile ground they were beginning to cultivate, firmly establishing a foundation for future interactions built on collaboration rather than conflict. His rival paused, a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps? Tomorrow, huh? He replied. You're serious about this? Every bit, James answered, feeling a wave of conviction. As they parted ways, James walked back to his car slowly, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. What he hadn't anticipated was coming face to face with the temptation to retreat. A soft breeze whispered doubts that fluttered in his mind. What if this collaboration failed? What if they couldn't overcome the critically ingrained competition that had colored their past? Determined to conquer fear with action, he stopped at a nearby park. Watching a group of kids play, he couldn't help but compare their carefree laughter to the weight of his adult responsibilities. Reconnecting with that untainted joy ignited a fire, a piercing realization that pushed him forward. Tomorrow would be a test. Stepping into the office alongside his former rival was one thing, But could he embrace that childlike creativity again while forging paths into the unknown? Would the real prize lie beyond a mere professional alliance, entwined with rediscovering pieces of himself? As he drove home, uncertainty settled in again. The stakes were escalating, grasping at the edges of his burgeoning vulnerability. Worry shadowed his determination, and the weight of his past decisions pressed heavier than ever. Yet deep in his gut, an exhilarating thought dawned. Perhaps in facing his rival and initiating this creative synergy, he might also tackle the emptiness within himself, a darkness that had hung around him for too long, unsolved and ignored. But what if the deeper journey began not just in the office but in confronting the very core of who he had been? The road stretched forward, a reflection of all the possibilities and fears bubbling beneath the surface. James knew he was on the verge of a pivotal transformation and exploration that would demand everything he had to give. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but James awoke with a weight pressing down on his chest. The sunlight breaking through his window felt intrusive, interrupting a restless sleep filled with a kaleidoscope of indecisions. Meeting his rival felt monumental, yet the undercurrent of fear lingered. What if he fumbled this opportunity? Arriving at the office, he faced the emptiness of the conference room momentarily set up with 2 chairs and a large whiteboard. The starkness echoed his own trepidations. As he paced the room, he thought about the goals they needed to discuss, visions that combined their strengths. How could he ignite a creative dialogue when he felt like a novice among seasoned opponents? The entrance creaked, and his rival stepped in, exuding a blend of confidence and concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he remarked, a teasing edge in his voice that tried to mask vulnerability. James nodded, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "Good," his rival said, taking a seat. "Let us shape this into something real." They began sketching their ideas, the tension palpable yet surprisingly energizing. Each suggestion took them deeper into creative territory. They brainstormed concepts that merged their individual styles rather than competing aesthetics. Yet beneath the surface, James grappled with something troubling, an internal barrier that came from years of sheer ambition and competition overshadowing those raw, creative impulses. After an hour, he leaned back, frustration gnawing at him. "It's like we're running in circles," he admitted. "I can't shake the feeling we're holding back." "Maybe you are," his rival countered. "If this is some effort to coexist without conflict, it could be limiting." The words landed heavily, striking at the core of James's insecurity. Did he indeed fear confrontation? The thought rattled him, and he displayed the telltale signs: fidgeting fingers and a clenched jaw. "Let us be real," James said finally. "We've both been through a lot to get here. I think I'm worried about what happens next if this fails." His rival regarded him with a serious expression. "We can't be afraid to push. This is about evolution, right? Personal growth means stepping out of comfortable roles." This acknowledgement sparked something inside James, a flicker of determination igniting a deeper resolve. He realized he needed a shift in perspective, not just for himself, but for the partnership to take root. If he truly wanted to evolve, he had to embrace an environment where vulnerability was not perceived as weakness. "All right then," James said, his voice steadier now. "Let us put everything on the board. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What do we really want out of this?" As they worked through their fears and aspirations, the rawness of their honesty startled James. Every admission illuminated shadows in their past, moments shaped by pride, pain, and false bravado. In sharing these truths, he discovered not only a deeper understanding of his rival but also of himself. The barriers he needed to dismantle were internal rather than external. This alliance was a chance for growth, to uplift each other while realigning their definitions of success. The session morphed into something transformative, a fusion of personalities balanced by honesty and ambition. With every idea shared, James felt more liberated, edging closer to the creative renaissance he had longed for all these years. However, with this new understanding arose an unsettling suspicion that loomed over him. Was there more to uncover within himself? What further revelations awaited beyond these walls? As the day wound down, the air shifted. Something had changed, but shadows lurked at the edges of his consciousness. The real journey was still dauntingly ahead, carrying with it the echoes of challenges yet to be faced. Would this newfound synergy lead him to confront the uncharted areas of his life, or would the weight of their pasts pull them back? The questions gnawed at him as he stepped outside, each pulse of anxiety reminding him he was just beginning to scratch the surface of transformation. Determined, he reflected on the path ahead, knowing that true discovery often lies not only in conquering challenges but also in facing the profound silence of one's inner truth. As the wind stirred again, James stepped forward. Feeling the anticipation building within him, he was ready to uncover what lay beneath the surface. Yet what he didn't know was how much darker the depths would get before they emerged into the light. The following day, James stood before the mirror, scrutinizing his reflection with a fierce intensity. There was a fluttering in his stomach, a blend of anticipation and trepidation as he prepared for the next meeting. With his recent revelation still fresh in mind, he felt an unfamiliar notion creeping, and this was no longer just about the project, or even his rivalry. It was about reclaiming his narrative. Each day he spent in an office saturated with competition felt increasingly stifling, and he recognized the power dynamic change before him. Navigating his commute felt different. As he detected the weight of the city surrounding him, vibrant yet chaotic, he pondered deeper implications of his role within it. The ghosts of fears faded slightly. He was gaining agency over his thoughts and actions rather than letting them consume him. With every step toward the office, he envisioned possibilities that lay ahead, not as an adversary, but as a potential collaborator. Upon entering the conference room, it buzzed with a renewed energy. His rival was already there, pencil poised above a sketch filled with concepts born from their previous meeting. The tension that had hung in the air before seemed transformed into a tangible excitement. "Ready to dive deeper?" his rival asked, a spark of enthusiasm framing his words. "Absolutely. I want to explore the concepts we touched upon further," James replied, more confidently than he felt. As they worked through ideas, James felt the old habits threatening to constrict him again, wanting to withdraw, fearing overexposure of his thoughts. Yet the determination to lean into discomfort nudged him forward. With each suggestion, he chipped away at the fortress of self-doubt. "I think we're only just beginning to explore what-ifs," James ventured, pushing against his own limitations. "What if we challenge the client's expectations even further? What if we introduced elements that they might not see coming?" His rival raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "That sounds risky. Are we ready for that?" A surge of adrenaline shot through James. "That's the point, isn't it? To redefine the boundaries between safe and groundbreaking. There's real opportunity here for both of us." His words resonated in the room, igniting a fire in his rival. Together, they began sketching bold ideas that deviated strongly from the norm. In leaning into innovation, James appreciated a radical shift in the textures of their creative discussions. They were no longer playing it safe but rather pushing back against the edge of the familiar, dancing with uncertainty. As the concept unfolded, James confronted fears he hadn't fully acknowledged. He realized he had often tiptoed around ambition, avoiding the possibility of judgment or failure. This partnership necessitated a calculated risk. The dynamic invited him to shed the persona of cautious competitor and embrace the identity of a visionary. They finalized their presentation, and the weight of their vulnerability transformed into a new strength. "This is it," James declared, glancing at his rival. "We own this now." A shared exhilaration permeated the room, but beneath the rush lurked echoes of a conflict yet to surface. Was he genuinely ready to commit to this risky path, or was he merely swept up in the momentum? The doubts prickled within him still, a subtle reminder that transformation doesn't occur without facing the shadows. As they concluded their session, a notion gripped him: what if stepping into this new role contradicted the safe identity he had crafted over the years? But the longing to redefine his trajectory outweighed the fear of losing an older version of himself. Gathering his materials, he paused before exiting, absorbing the vibrant energy lingering in the space. "I need to push myself further," James whispered, not just to the room, but to the man he was becoming. What lay ahead was murky. He had glimpsed the surface, but the depths of his potential remained unexplored. What challenges awaited when the presentation was delivered? Would he firmly stand in his new authenticity, or retreat back to the familiar? Determined and slightly intimidated, James stepped into the unknown again, aware that every choice led him further down a path of transformation. Each pulse of anxiety reminded him of growth, but what awaited beyond this threshold could change everything. Would he rise to the occasion, or would fear rewrite his narrative once more? The day of the launch had arrived, and the energy crackling in the air was palpable. James stood backstage, heart racing, as he watched the bustling crowds slowly fill the venue. The moment was a culmination of everything he had processed over the previous weeks: a confrontation with his past self, a commitment to embracing vulnerability, and a chance to redefine success. When he had first made the decision to blend his technological empire with social responsibility, the idea had felt monumental, daunting even, yet now he stood on the verge of unveiling something transformative. As he walked to the front of the stage, the lights illuminating his face, he reflected on how far he had come. Just months ago, he was consumed by the relentless pursuit of wealth and status, disconnected from any meaningful human experience. Today, he was ready to show the world that success and social impact not only could coexist, they should. The audience quieted, and he began his presentation. Speaking from the heart, he shared the journey that had led him to this moment, the unexpected bond he formed with Lily, the little girl who had opened his eyes to the harsh realities faced by so many. He recounted their experiences, visiting shelters, meeting families struggling to build a better life, and how those encounters had ignited a fire within him. With each word, he sensed the room leaning in, captivated. He detailed how his initiative would provide access to technology and resources for underprivileged children, allowing them to dream bigger and achieve more. The vision was no longer merely about profits, but about catalyzing change within communities. The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of supportive energy washing over him, reaffirming that he was on the right path. The culmination of the launch included a concrete demonstration of their new software, a seamless interface designed to connect kids with educational resources that were previously beyond reach. As his team revealed the functionalities, James felt a surge of pride. They were not just presenting a product, they were introducing hope. As the event closed, he retreated backstage to catch his breath, still buzzing from the adrenaline and validation. The realization of his transformation was overwhelming. He had embraced the melding of his personal and professional lives to create something meaningful. It was no longer just about him, he was part of a greater narrative now. Within moments, he shared the stage with Lily, who had become a symbol of everything he had pursued. Holding her hand, he felt gratitude swell within him. This little girl had not only changed his life, she had illuminated his purpose. They faced the crowd together, her joy echoed in the applause, and he knew in that moment he had conquered not only his fears but also his misconceptions about success. Recognition came swiftly. As the weeks unfurled, major publications began covering the initiative, and James was invited to speak on panels dedicated to social entrepreneurship. His approach began to inspire others in the tech industry, challenging the status quo and promoting ethical business practices. In the wake of this success, he found himself at a celebratory dinner with his team, a stark contrast to the isolation he had previously experienced. Laughter filled the room, and camaraderie flourished in the vibrant atmosphere. James felt an unprecedented sense of belonging. He had cultivated a work culture founded on openness, innovation, and shared purpose. With time, his relationship with his rival transformed too. They found common ground, their healthy competition reigniting their individual passions while elevating their collective impact. Each collaboration was infused with newfound respect and understanding, weaving together their strengths to create disruptive solutions that reach far beyond their own companies. James's journey, once defined by solitary ambition, had taken a 180-degree turn toward meaningful engagement. He had demonstrated that achieving personal success could coexist with lifting others along the way. In doing so, he stood more confident than ever, recognized for who he had become: a leader, a mentor, and a father figure to Lily. As he walked to the window at his office, gazing out at the cityscape that had once felt devoid of connection, he smiled. The shadows of his past no longer closed in on him. Instead, they served as reminders of the resilience he had discovered within. This was the moment of triumph, the validation of every sacrifice made, and the embodiment of every lesson learned. James Harrington had achieved not just success, but profound fulfillment. Now, you need to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your journey of personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help this story reach those who need it. Comment your reactions and theories about this impactful conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative story. Don't wait even one more second. Show your support, and help us spread these vital messages of overcoming personal challenges.